Hello, welcome back. My name is Brianna Ely. It's the 20th of October 2020, and this is my reproductive portfolio assignment for University of New England Medical Physiology 1010. And this presentation is on the feedback loops in the non-gravid female reproductive system. So our parameters of interest are going to be non-gravid females. Gravid means pregnant, so non-gravid means not pregnant. So specifically, our demographic of this presentation will focus on women of childbearing age who are not pregnant. So women who have gone through puberty, their reproductive systems are active, but not pregnant. Because the female reproductive system is cyclical, and pregnancy obviously interrupts that cycle. But with this cycle, they produce a gamete once a month via the menstrual cycle. And there are two major cycles within that menstrual cycle. There's the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. You can see this flow chart here, kind of the breakdown of the different cycles. So overarching, we have the menstrual cycle, and within that, ovarian and uterine. Of the ovarian cycle, there is three phases: follicular phase, ovulation, and luteal phase. Of the uterine cycle, there are three phases as well that coincide with the three phases of the ovarian cycle, and they are menses, the proliferative phase, and the secretory phase. So the cycles are the game, and so now we need to meet our players. The players are gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, the follicle-stimulating hormone FSH, and luteinizing hormone LH from the anterior pituitary gland. And we also have estrogen, progesterone, inhibin, and anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH, from the ovary. So those are our players, and they are going to inhibit each other and work as the feedback loops, either positive feedback or negative feedback loops on each other. Just a fun fact. Most anthropologists believe that women actually came up with the calendar because it not only corresponds to the lunar phases, but it also corresponds to the menstrual cycle. Just kind of fun to know. So the ovarian cycle, let's do a deep dive. This schematic on the right is going to be very helpful. And if you move in a counterclockwise direction, it matches with the ovarian cycle. So starting off, we have the follicular phase. That'll be in this right-hand corner of this ovary. And the follicular phase is the longest part of the ovarian cycle. And it starts the same day as the menses phase, which we'll get to. And what happens is there's a surge in FSH and LH, which prompts these follicles, these primordial follicles, to develop. However, we don't want more than one follicle developing. Why? Because more than one follicle developing is dangerous for the female. If she were to have multiple oocytes ovulate, there's an increased risk of traumatic pregnancy and birth, which threatens her life. She also runs the risk of having an ectopic pregnancy, the wrong implantation of the oocyte in different parts of her abdomen, which could all result in severe internal bleeding, which could kill her. So that there's a lot of risk in having more than one follicle. And evolutionary-wise, risk is not good. So we only want one follicle going at a time. Another reason why only one follicle is released at a time is the system doesn't want to waste its follicles. It wants to have a sustained period of time where that female is able to reproduce, because that's the most fit way. Because the goal of the reproductive system is to reproduce and pass on the genes of the organism into their progeny. So that's a follicular phase, and it goes and goes and goes, and then it forms a dominant follicle, and within that dominant follicle we have an oocyte. And when that oocyte ruptures out of the follicle, this is ovulation. And this is caused by a surge in estrogen, FSH, and LH. And it only lasts 1 to 3 days. And next, after that oocyte ruptures out, this ruptured follicle forms the corpus luteum, and then we move into the luteal phase. The luteal phase is a little shorter than the follicular phase, and it is driven by progesterone, which is produced, and the corpus luteum is going to secrete hormones that will prepare the body for pregnancy. So that is the ovarian cycle. Let's do the uterine cycle. So the uterine cycle begins with menses. This is the period where the endometrium lining, this lining here, is going to slough off and it will come out as blood. And this is the cycle's reset button. It also matches with the follicular phase of the ovarian cycle. And like I said, this is the reset button. The goal of the reproductive system is to get pregnant, and when it doesn't, it has to start over because, gotta give it another try. So this is how it starts over. So phase 2, the proliferative phase. This is also a part of the follicular phase, and a little bit of ovulation. It bleeds into ovulation. And this is where, after menses, this layer is gone. So the proliferative phase is going to build it back up. It's going to restore that endometrium and get it going again so that the uterus is ready to accept a fertilized egg. And ovulation happens somewhere at the end of the proliferative phase. So the final phase of the uterine cycle is the secretory phase, and this is corresponding to the luteal phase. So we've got the corpus luteum, which is secreting hormones, and those hormones are going to act on this endometrium, and it's going to just richen up, build up the nutrient stores there so that when a fertilized egg comes down the tube, it will be able to implant in that endometrium and create an embryo, later on a fetus, later on a baby. That's the goal, right? That's the ideal. However, if that doesn't happen, it starts all over with menses. So looking at this diagram, this is the menstrual cycle with all of its different parts all stacked up together so we can see how they interact with each other. So with all of these different cycles and phases stacked on top of each other, we're able to see the feedback loops. So starting off, we have the follicular phase, and within that we have our menses that takes place because the cycle is resetting. It's going to try again to get pregnant, which means we have follicles developing and moving towards ovulation. This will take follicle-stimulating hormone to get the ball rolling. It will also take estrogen to prepare the oocyte and prepare the body for ovulation and for pregnancy. And estrogen is going to be a negative feedback loop on FSH and LH, as well as AMH acting as a negative feedback loop on FSH and LH. We just want enough to get a follicle developing, and then we don't want any more because of the reasons I already said. So next, estrogen rises because it's a positive feedback loop on itself. What a powerhouse. Inhibin is also a negative feedback loop on FSH and LH because, again, we do not want more than one follicle. Too risky, too dangerous, too wasteful. Progesterone is being inhibited by estrogen. Estrogen is acting as a negative feedback loop on progesterone. And as estrogen rises, we move into the proliferative phase as well as closer to ovulation, and the endometrial lining thickens and is restored. We have a surge in LH and FSH and estrogen, and that is ovulation. So then ovulation, we turn over to the luteal phase and the secretory phase. So the egg is released. It just has to meet with the sperm, and hopefully pregnancy will result. That's what the uterus and the ovaries are rooting for. So the corpus luteum is going to secrete hormones that will prepare this endometrium to have that fertilized oocyte attach and implant and grow into an embryo fetus baby. You also have the main dominant, or the dominant hormone in the luteal phase, secretory phase, is progesterone, and progesterone will act as a negative feedback loop on estrogen, and you can see that as estrogen dips. It's not as low as it was at the beginning of the follicular phase, because it still acts as a preparatory hormone for pregnancy. But for the most part, progesterone is the number one, and it keeps estrogen down. We also see a spike in inhibin, and inhibin again inhibits FSH, and we don't want FSH because we don't want another follicle to rupture and mess up this could-be pregnancy. So that's how all of these hormones act as feedback loops on each other, as well as the uterine cycle corresponding with the ovarian cycle, which is those are the driving influences for the reproductive system of the female. And here are my references. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.